Yeah, 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 yeah. Look. Never switch on the homies in the day ones. They didn't wanna open doors, so we made some. Take a bow on these haters like I'm Trey Young. That direct deposit hitting like a bass drum. Incoming, coming. Keep it incoming, coming.
Welcome back to Bottle Rocket, guys. I'm Elena, here joined by Maeve and Jerry. And today we're joined by Mitch Kerzner, an Emmy Award winning broadcast executive and producer. Hi, Mitch. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Mitch, take us back to the beginning. What first drew you into television and broadcast production?
I didn't even know what I was getting into. I loved sports, and I was going to university for radio and TV because I loved sports. And my parents were they didn't know it either, but they just said, if that's what your heart is, try it. So I went to school for it, and I just, started working and saw the behind the scenes and how it operated. And you could have back then, I don't think it's the same today, but back then you could have a good career in television, and you just start. And to me, it was work as hard and as long as I could and show some creativity and intelligence and see where that took you. And I found out, and it was a great career. It still is. But that's how it started.
What was your fallback? It wasn't going to be TV.
I don't know. I was going to maybe try to take your job, Stan, working in New York, but I didn't really have one. And I was young enough, I started in high school taking a co-op program at a local cable station. So when I was 15, so there was no other path. And I remember waiting to see if I got accepted to the university that I wanted to get into, which was here in Toronto. That was the best program in Canada for broadcasting. And I remember checking the mail. Remember the mail, it comes to your door. That every day checking for that letter from the university to see if I got in or not. And I got the letter. And I was so terrified to open it, because if I didn't get in, then I'd have to figure out a plan B. Thankfully, I got accepted, and things kind of took off from there. But I didn't have a plan B, but I was young enough that if I needed one, I would have found something.
What university was that?
At the time, it was Ryerson, but it's now called Toronto Metropolitan University. And people ask me about school, and even when I was, hiring people from schools, look, I don't want to disparage any school, but school's nice, and it teaches you, gives you a foundation, but it doesn't prepare you for real life and what you're getting into. When I was hiring people, some people would come in and go, I went to this school. I don't care. Like, who are you? Who are you? Are you willing to sacrifice everything to get into this business? Because I know I worked every weekend, every holiday. When people are at home watching, and everyone gathers around their TV to watch Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, Boxing Day, what are they watching? They're watching a show that you're producing. So where are you? You're not at home watching TV. You're away doing your job. So are you willing to give up all of that and live it and make it a part of you? And if you are, then we can talk. But and I don't care what school, what your background is, you got to have the work ethic first and make this the priority for you. Because if you don't, and you think it's just going to be a 9-to-5 fun job, it's not. It's the greatest job in the world, but you better be willing to make those sacrifices to get there. And if you're not, it's not for you.
You were a producer at TSN for some time. What did you produce, and what would be a typical day for you?
It's funny. I started producing. I was lucky because I'd had some background. I did the Olympics in 1992 in Barcelona just after I graduated. And I went to TSN as associate producer to produce a brand new show called TSN Inside Sports with Dave Hodge. And Dave's a legend in the broadcast business. And Stan knows Dave from their times together. So I did that for a few years. And that was, we talked about education. That was the best education I could ever have hoped for, learning from Dave, who's my mentor, and I'm thankful and very fortunate to call him a friend. We haven't worked together in over 20 years, and we still talk every week, things. And so I went there and I produced that, which was a daily show. And before phones and FaceTime, we had to line up interviews every day, come up with a topic. I'd write the feature, edit the feature, same day, every day for years. And so I did that, and that was the best basis background I could get in the business, because once again, what did you have to do? Work tirelessly every day. And then Dave and I started a show at TSN called That's Hockey, which was all hockey. And we did the same type of thing, but just focused on hockey for a number of years. And then I started getting into live event production. Then I did studio shows, live games, intermissions. And it took a while. And once you get to the point where the shows are great, but I still wanted more. I wanted to do games. And I started doing games, and I just worked my way up, and I ended up doing all of TSN's big hockey shows. I did the Stanley Cup playoffs, their lead crew for the playoffs, the Olympics in Vancouver, the World Junior Championships. I did all that, but there was a foundation that had to be built, and I was fortunate that they believed in the style that I was moving towards and doing. And I always thank the brass at TSN there were some complaints. And this guy, but they stuck with me because they saw the difference of the shows, what I was trying to do, what I saw, and not just me. It was me and most of the time our analyst, and we just had a different vision and a different way, because people show up and they say, this is what the game's going to be, and they've decided what the game is going to be, but they've got video of this incident or a graphic about this. We're going to put up 20 graphics, and they ignore the actual game that they're doing. I always thought that my job was to entertain and cover the game, so that the next morning when I read the newspaper, if people know what newspapers are today, but when they read the newspaper, when I got on the plane to go to the next city and I got the paper, there was nothing in the paper that our viewers didn't already know, because we put it on the broadcast. And it would be even better if the paper was quoting or saying something that we noticed and nobody else did. So that was my goal. And I was, once again, very, very fortunate to be teamed up with Glenn Healy, who is, without question, in my mind, the best analyst in hockey. He's not working in broadcasting now, and he's gone to a higher calling, which is I'm working with him now at the NHL Alumni to help the former players, the guys we covered, But Glenn Healy has a mind for the game that to be able to tap into that type of genius and see what he saw and be able to work together. And the two of us we'd have before the game, during the game, after the game, about stuff that we saw, wanted to see, but we never came with any safety net. Oh, if this doesn't happen, we can always go back to there. We pushed each other to the absolute maximum every game to make sure that we were covering that game better than anybody else could, because we didn't have a parachute.
Did you know that Healy was a comedian?
Well, I know it. I sit with him every day, but was he in his previous life?
Do you know that he was a comedian on TV during the Islander
Oh,
telecast?
heels and flats.
It was heels and flats,
Yeah.
and it was all ad lib, and it was the funniest thing. In fact, we want to get Healy on this show. I don't know what happened with it. We have invited him, but I want to get back to the original. The original is Foster Hewitt. I started listening to Foster Hewitt in 1942, and to this day, I'll say he's the best play-by-play guy in the history of hockey. Of course, things have changed and blah, blah, blah. He didn't have a color guy to work with. And to me, he made me a hockey fan. Let's put it that way. Now, later on, when Marv Albert was doing Ranger stuff, and he just got out of Syracuse University, he sent me a couple of tapes, and I said, well, you should listen to Foster Hewitt if you want to hear the greatest. So he did. And he said, I don't like Foster Hewitt. So it shows it shows you. But for me, from Foster to his son, who was very, very good, very good, Billy Hewitt, and the guy in Montreal,
Danny Gallivan.
well, before Danny Gallivan, there was another guy who only did it for a year or two, Doug Smith. Doug Smith was as good a hockey guy that I ever heard. Now, I'm listening to him after I'm, alternating with Foster, but Doug Smith was great. I was very disappointed when he left hockey. Oh, who's your favorite?
Play-by-play?
Play-by-play all time.
Well, it's somebody who I wish I would have had a chance to work with. But to me, it's Bob Cole. Bob Cole was the voice of hockey for generations, and he'd, once again, like Bob prepared, but the things that he'd come up with off the cuff and just the way he called a game, he could get you sucked in at the right time. And I find that's a big problem with a lot of announcers today. They think the louder you are, the more. It's not. Raising your voice on a simple shot from the point, and the goalie makes a save, and you make it sound like he just made the greatest save ever, then you've got nowhere to go on the greatest save. So Bob was the best. Maybe it's because growing up and getting into the business, and he was the guy. But I don't think that for me there was anybody better. And you just finished the Olympics, and I remember back to Bob's call of the Olympics when Canada was going into it was late in the game, and it was like, if the score is tied, and if end of regulation, it's what, and after that, it's what, meaning the shootout. Simple. Cuts through all the white noise. And the way he said it, you could go through call after call after call. They're going home. The Russians in Philadelphia. They're going home. You can still feel that. Like the way he got his point across. You could listen to him all day long call a hockey game, and he knew when to use his voice and how. And I find most of today's announcers have no clue.
What about Mike Emmerich? I'm an American.
Mike was very good too. I'm Canadian. I'm biased. So I didn't hear Mike Emmerich as much as I grew up with Bob Cole. And Mike was obviously excellent. But if you're asking me for my personal thought, it's Bob Cole.
Pick the best American.
Well, Mike Emmerich's right at the top. You mentioned Kenny Albert, Marv's son. I worked with him a couple of times. He's very good too. So there's lots of, when you get to the network level, they're usually very good, and you can pick and choose, and everyone's going to have their own favorite for their own reason. But, they're usually at that level for a reason.
You ever listen to Foster Hewitt?
Sure. Absolutely.
What about him? Where do you put him?
He'd be up there. But Foster Hewitt was very good. And I'd never disparage Foster Hewitt, but he was the first, and there wasn't a lot of other people doing it at the time. So you look at that and say, yeah, he was great. And I don't know, is he top 5? Yeah, for sure. He began what everybody else has learned from. You take from him, being the first is very difficult or very easy, depending on how you look at it. But the fact that we're here in 2026 talking about how good Foster Hewitt was says something about how good he was.
He invented, he shoots, he scores.
Yes.
They're still doing it. Who could be better than that?
Yeah,
Guys doing it in the 1930s, and they're
Yep.
still doing it. Nobody's matched that. Nobody's come up with anything better than what he did.
Yeah, that, like I said, the fact that we're still talking about him says something.
Foster Hewitt did the 1972 Summit Series with the Soviet Union. That was the first time I heard him, because he came out of retirement to do that. And, it annoyed me because he kept calling Yvonne Cornway Cornoyer. And so he got it right after about the third game. And so, yeah, but I remember listening to him. I thought, well, this guy must be, this guy must be new, because I'd never heard him before. And so, but he was great. He was the perfect fit for that series.
And it also goes to show you don't have to have that deep voice to be great. He was great just being him.
Mitch, winning an Emmy is a major achievement. What project earned that recognition, and what made it so special?
We did it was the broadcaster of the Blackhawks, because I was producing in Chicago, and it was his last game. He'd done it for 39 years. So we put together a real special broadcast for that game. And that's what it was.
Your work with the alumni, I know Glenn Healy's been active with the alumni for years. What does that entail, and what exactly is your function there?
So I'm responsible for all of our content, broadcast, media productions, and really, I got a fantastic job. I sit with the players, former players, and I do long form interviews with them, of which we take parts and put them on social media. But it's really to get to the heart of players. And we're building a big library of former players that tell us their life story. Like, this is their legacy interview, because it lives with the alumni, and the alumni are there to help support former players. And we want to honor the past, make tomorrow better than today, and help the former players. So I go out, and these guys are fantastic. The thing is, the older guys, everyone thinks, oh, you played in the NHL, you're a multimillionaire and you got it made. It's not true, especially the older players who, before, say, 94, with work stoppages, they don't have big pensions. The average NHL career today is 22-something years. So there's a lot of people who, and to be an NHL player, to play one game in the NHL is a massive accomplishment. And when you finish playing, though, and a lot of players today finish at a young age, they're just out of the game. You see the turnover. A guy's here today, gone tomorrow, and he's out of the game. And then when you retire, when you've given everything of your life to that level, to be an NHL player, you probably, now more players are going to university in the US and they get an education, but they've given everything they've got. And now they look around, they're 25, short career, long life. What do you do after? And they might not think that they have the skills because they didn't go to school. They've only played hockey. But to get to that level, you have skills that any employer would want. Dedication, hard work, teamwork, handling pressure. You've played in front of 20,000 people watching you. You've got those great skills. So how do we help those players move on to the next chapter of their life and make that chapter as successful, if not more so, than what they did to reach the NHL? And my job is to talk with them, get their story, put it out there, and capture what it takes to be an NHLer, to be in the NHL, and to live your life that way.
Give us one of your favorite player stories.
Well, maybe not a story, because there's lots of them and every player's got them. But I'll tell you my favorite so far, and I don't want to mitigate any player because I've enjoyed sitting with all of them. But maybe the most special to me was at the Four Nations face-off in Montreal. I had the privilege to sit with Ken Dryden. And Ken Dryden, he's a scholar. He's very understands what he was doing. And I sat with Ken for almost an hour and a half. And I was, Stan, you do interviews after interviews. You just do the interview. This was different. I was nervous talking to Ken because if you weren't on your best game, he could shut you down and just say, give you short answers. But he was fantastic. And Ken's a stoic guy. He laughed. He cried. He told great stories and about his retirement and winning the Stanley Cups and going to school. And at the time, I didn't know he was sick. He had cancer. But he did. And I guess I was just, talk about the right place at the right time. And to me, more importantly, the right forum, because he knew this was for the alumni. The right. This was going to help. What we do, we try to get these interviews and help to generate some revenue because every penny we get goes back to the players. We're a charity. We're a not-for-profit. We don't want to, everything we do. And this comes right from the top at Glenn Healy, that everything we do goes right to the players to help. So Ken knew, and it was a thrill for me to be able to speak to him. And Ken didn't sign a lot, and I had a copy of his book, The Game, an original copy, which I read as part of research to do the interview. And at the end, I didn't know if I should ask him, but I thought the interview went pretty well and he seemed really energized by it. So I asked him if he would sign it for me, half expecting him saying no, or he'd just go, sure. Too much from Ken, best with. So I gave him the book and asked him, and he said, sure. And he sat there for 5 minutes, just sitting there. Originally, I was like, what's he doing? Because I thought it was going to be too much, best wishes. But he was thinking, because I think the interview meant something to him. What should I write? And then he wrote it. And I didn't read it till after he left. I just said thank you, and we talked a little bit more. And it was very special. And those are the moments when you're talking to former players, moments like those that make what I do very special to me and heartwarming, and know that we're doing the right thing by talking with them, and that they understand that the alumni means a lot and we're helping players. So that interview to me, above all the others, but especially because Ken passed away less than a year later, that is a very special place for me.
Did you do anybody from the original 6?
Oh yeah, we all the time. In there we did Yvonne Cornwallis. We did a lot. I off the top of my head, but I'm talking with, like, I'm about to go down and do a bunch of older players from that era that are down in Florida. I'm going to make a tour and probably interview 10 to 15 of those. There's lots of, like, to me, the players from, say pre-1980, they're great. Like, I interviewed Derek Sanderson, and I was just in Boston, Derek Sanderson and Johnny Busick and Don Marcotte. Like, we do all these, to me, I want to interview everybody. So we will be getting to them, and I set them up. Right now, I would have gone and interviewed those, the Bruins, the other Bruins. I was going to interview Jerry Cheevers and Eddie Westfall, who you'd know from the Islanders days. There's a whole group of them down there, but right now we're just consumed by, time-wise, by our Man of the Year, which is coming up, which we're honoring Paul Coffey for. So, and last year it was the 72 Team Canada team. So, but I'm just tied up with all the things we need to do for Paul's celebration. But right after that, yeah, we're gonna, I do all those interviews. I want to talk to everybody.
I worked with Sanderson on the book, I've Got to Be Me. What's he like now?
He's good. He's good. We went out to dinner. He's there's some physical limitations. He's, his back is sore, but other than that, he's great. Lots of stories, lots of fun, great guy. I really enjoyed spending time with Derek, and I still talk to him. And that's the other beauty of what I do, is I talk to players, the alumni, I get to know them. And for me, the greatest part is that now I can call them friends, because we talk after, we continue the relationship on to, I talk to them frequently, most of these guys. So it's great.
Derek was the first and best storyteller that I ever met. It was him. I would say Sanderson was tied for first place with Don.
Don Cherry?
Yeah, nobody that I ever dealt with just continued telling great stories without much effort on my part.
Yeah, they're both great. I worked with Don for 4 years when I was the executive producer at Hockey Night in Canada. I worked closely with Don, and great guy. We had many great chats.
How come he's not given the Order of Canada?
I think he's been given the Order of Ontario, but
I know.
But that's out of my hands.
Okay.
Mitch, you worked with a lot of hockey players. Were there any of them that were more difficult to deal with than others?
No, not really. Hockey players are a different breed. They're good guys. I don't know if I was doing this for other sports, if I'd A, want to do it, or B, have nearly as much fun and enjoy my time with them. Hockey players are all great guys. I've been at this for over 30 years, and It's hard to think of an encounter with somebody who's a bad person. They're all good guys.
That's right. It's amazing. Amazing. And the tougher the guy, like Louis Fontinato, who was the bad guy for the Rangers, Ivan the Terrible, I go back to my hero, number 12 on the Leafs, Bill Azanicki. These guys are, once they're off the ice, their toughness disappears. Always.
They're great. You asked me about it. Like I sat recently with Dick Duff. Great guy. Just, they're so welcoming and friendly with lots to talk about. And especially, if you've been out of the game for a few years, when you play, you don't want to talk to the media ever because they're always there asking. When the lights go out and nobody comes to talk to you, and then somebody shows up and says, you still mean something. And people still want to know about you because it could be someone who was a fourth liner who not many people really remember, but he means something to somebody because somebody remembers me. Yeah, I remember that guy. And they haven't been heard from in a very long time. And all of a sudden, their story comes up again. And people are like, yeah, that guy was great. I remember. What happened to him? This is what happened. When we tell your story. So, they're the tough guys, the stars, they're all just such wonderful people. I sat with Ray Bork, great guy. Like we're honoring Paul Coffey this weekend, great guy. They're normal people. We put them on a pedestal and they deserve to be there for what they've accomplished. They're some of them are the best of the best, but even to make it to one game in the NHL, you're the best of the best.
Dick Duff could be the most underrated Maple Leaf of all time. Mm-hmm. But what fascinated me about, you know where Dick Duff comes from?
Yeah, I got to remember, he grew up on the same street. There are two other guys who he grew up with. They each won 6 Stanley Cups. They had 18 Stanley Cups from one street. He's from Northern Ontario.
Right, Northern Ontario. I think it was Rue Noranda. The point is, Dick had a short stint with the Rangers where I got to know him. It's fascinating. And it was, to me, because I come from Brooklyn, we have our own language called Brooklynese. This guy spoke English with a French accent or French with an English accent. But I never heard, I'm not kidding, I never heard an accent like this in my life. It was like his own personal accent because he was on the border, border. Yep. Way up in Northern Ontario, you're French, you're English. Oh, I tell you, he did some wonderful things with the Canadians and with the Maple Leafs. He was the guy who won the cup for the Maple Leafs in '62. I was at that game in Chicago, Game 6. Chicago went up 1-0. Bobby Hull scored the goal, and the Maniacs in Chicago Stadium spent 15 minutes throwing all sorts of crap on the ice, including an ink bottle, which took them 15 minutes. This is in the third period. Took them 15 minutes to clean it up. And guess what? All the momentum that Chicago had disappeared. Dickie Duff comes up with the big goal, and they win the cup.
Yeah, you mentioned like Northern Ontario. So Ron Noranda, right? Dave Keon's from there. So many players come from that area, Northern Ontario, like that small towns. And I'd ask, what's in the water? And it was, well, we played hockey, got cold, the ice freezes outside early. That's all we do from like October till April. We play outside. And that's how, and they had good players. And they just honed their skills and their toughness. You got to be tough to play outside in -30 You got to love the game. And they did. And back then, as you know, original six, there aren't 700 NHL players. There's what, 140, maybe 120? And you got to be the best. And they were. And they come from small towns, which is why they're good people. They're the best. And coming full circle, why hockey players are the best. They have respect for people. They don't grow up with any entitlement. They have to work so hard, especially back then. And then when the season's over, they go work in the mines and they get strong, or they work on the farm. Look at Flin Flon, Manitoba, Flin Flon, Bobby Clark, right? They have so many. You look up, I think they have about 18 players that played in the NHL that came from Flin Flon. But the other thing they looked at, and I talked to Bobby Clark, another guy I spoke with, what a treasure. Why do they want to do this? Because they saw what their dads went through working in the mines, and they go, I don't want that. And their dad said, I don't want this for you. I want a better life for you. So they play and they hone their skills. And the difference between then and there's so many differences. And that's why I love talking to the older players. They didn't play hockey 12 months a year like they do now, training. And then, okay, it's season ended. They played baseball. They played soccer. They swam. They didn't pick up their skates until the next September. They were all around great athletes. Very good beer drinkers. Well, that too, but that didn't come till later in life. So it's a different way. I coached my son's baseball team, and we had a number of AAA hockey players on the team, good athletes. And my rule with the baseball team was, you play hockey until your hockey season is over. When your hockey season's over, if you want to be on the team, you become a baseball player for the next couple of months, and the baseball takes precedence. And I remember one kid, their season ended, and the next day they got eliminated. The next day, I was in a hockey rink, taking my kid to the rink, and that kid was there. And I look at him and go, what are you doing here? Oh, gotta get ready for next year, off-ice training. Like, really? You can't take a day off? He didn't make it to the NHL, didn't even play junior or anything, but it's like the demands on kids today are so excessive. When I talk to the older players, there's not one alumni, older player who played hockey 12 months a year. Not one. Okay. A lot of it because unless they could skate on water, they couldn't play because they played on the outdoor rinks.
They wrote a song about the guys and people from Northern Ontario. Became a big hit. Dear hearts and gentle people.
I haven't heard it, but that would be an accurate assessment.
You're supposed to ask me how it goes.
How does it go?
Doesn't go. You have to push it.
So you told me Glenn Healy was a comedian. Apparently you are too.
Yeah. That's one of my hobbies. Heels was so special when he was on the island, and how many goaltenders can play the bagpipes? That's not easy.
Well, I will say, you said Heels was such a special player when he was on, or so special when he was on Long Island. I'll say he's special today still. That's a life thing for him to be special. And yes, he plays the bagpipes. And if you have ever heard his bagpipe group, they're one of the best in the world, and they are fantastic. And of course,
my regards, will you?
Yeah, I will. And of course, he's the leader of the group because that's his personality. He just always.
He was the goalie in one of the greatest upsets in hockey history, beating
the Penguins.
Pittsburgh, beating Barrasso in Pittsburgh. He was fantastic. I did that game. Memorable.
I remember, so I know a lot of players on that team who've told me the story. So Al Arbor, going into the overtime, would go around the room and to each player and said, "Can you play with Mario Lemieux for one shift?" "Yeah." "Okay." "Can you play with Mario Lemieux for one shift?" "Yeah." "Okay." And he got them so fired up that they did, and they won. And you're right, one of the biggest upsets in the history of the game.
Al was from Sudbury.
Northern Ontario.
Northern Ontario, where they have 4 seasons, but 3 of them are winter.
You said that, not me.
I was looking at your LinkedIn page, and you had somebody giving a speech. I wasn't able to listen to it, but I will after we're done here. But that was Eddie Olczyk, and I'm plugging my buddy Perry Lefko's book here, Beating the Odds in Hockey and in Life with Eddie Olczyk. So what's he like to deal with?
Eddie was great. A real professional. Obviously, I don't have to say he knows the game. That's, who am I to say that he knows the game? He knows the game better than I do. So Eddie was a real delight to work with.
Yeah, he got hosed by Mike Keenan. Like, I'm wondering how he's not bitter about that.
I'm not going to speak for Eddie.
Is he from Chicago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Chicago born, played for the U.S. Olympic team, drafted by the Blackhawks, worked for the Blackhawks.
He's a great story. Glad he did the book.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want to read an inspirational story, this is it.
Yeah.
I mean, and what Perry did was he didn't just interview Eddie; he interviewed everybody around him, and because when Eddie was going through his cancer battle, it didn't just affect him; it affected his whole circle, and so he interviewed all those people too, and they have their own kind of little subsections in the book, which I thought was brilliant. And yeah, if you want to get an inspirational book, this is it. So. Now, what is a typical day for you dealing with the alumni? What time do you get up? What's your first duties? Take us through a day.
There is no typical day. There is no typical day. I'm blessed to work for Glenn Healy, who, I do my job with him now the way I did when I produced. No parachute, just get going. And he doesn't micromanage. Most of the time, he doesn't even know what I'm doing. I just say but he sees the results, and that's all that matters. So there is no typical day. Some days I do a bunch of interviews. Other days I'm doing research or setting things up, or setting up interviews. And for our Paul Coffey Man of the Year, putting together numerous videos. And so there is no typical day. I'm not an office 9 to 5 guy. I was up at 3:30 in the morning getting work done. But other days, I don't wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get work done. It's just, it's like hockey. It's like the game. It's a results-oriented business. Hockey, it doesn't matter what you do, you either win or you lose. And I see what I do as I either, I'm getting interviews, I'm getting content, I'm planning ahead. Like we did something last year I thought about, because in the other beauty, and Stan knows this, when you do interviews, if you don't walk out of each interview with a different idea, a new idea about something you can be doing or should be learning about, you haven't done your job. So I was doing interviews, and actually my inspiration was Jason Arnott. So I was talking to Jason, and he was talking about, I talk about their parents, you can't make it to the NHL without support, lots of it. And Jason was talking about his mom. How his mom was the one. It wasn't his dad. It was his mom who was at the games, pounding on the glass and, yelling at the refs. And she's a real firecracker. And it dawned on me going, yeah, you can't make it to the NHL. So I said, I wanted to do a Mother's Day week where you interview the player and his mother. And because the parents get no credit, they do all the hard work. They get the kids to the rink at 6 a.m. So the car rides to the rink, home from the rink. They spend tournaments, everything. That's what hockey and sports does at that age. There's a bond that's never broken from those rides and those times. So I was talking with Jason. He talked about his mom. So I called him. I was thinking, I want to do a Mother's Day week where you interview a player, an alumni, and their mother, and then alumni and their father for Father's Day. So we did it, and I remember doing it with a player and their mother, and it was for Mother's Day, and at the end, both of them were crying, and the mother said, "This is the best Mother's Day present you've ever given me," because the player, in a normal course of life, a lot of times they don't go, "Mom, I love you. Thank you for everything you've done for me," because it's just normal life. But I gave, not me, but we gave them that opportunity to say that. And he said it. And they were both bawling their eyes out. And it was such a touching interview moment. And a lot of the guys we did talking to their mothers or fathers, this is your opportunity. Tell me what say Happy Mother's Day to your mother and what she means to you. Oh, the tears, the emotion. Hockey players are real people, and this gave them that chance to do that. And we're going to do it again this year. And people that saw it, and now we can show it to them, they're like, yeah, I'll do that in a heartbeat. And whenever I ask them, hey, Mother's Day is coming up and this is what you do, I'll do it. Of course I'll do that. Because they want to bring attention to their parents, because they don't get to where they are unless it's their parents pushing them along the way and supporting them. And we gave them that opportunity. So those are the special things, like, day to day, what do I do? I create. I try to anyway. Come up with ideas. I'm relatively useless in most facets of life, but I try to think about things, and now all I think about is how I can do things to help our alumni and their families.
This is such a good point. I actually noticed from speaking with a lot of hockey players how much admiration they have for their mothers.
It often comes from that bond formed when their moms were the ones bringing them to the rink, driving them to practices and supporting them along the way.
Well, we see the hockey players as really tough guys, but they have a obviously soft side to them as well. And speaking of mothers, today is International Women's Day. So congratulations to all the mothers and women out there.
Mm-hmm. And just to your point, an interesting thing that I learned through the course of these interviews is that maybe you think that a hockey player, the rides to the rink and would be with their dads, and a lot of it is with their moms. A lot of it, and their mothers have a far bigger influence in their life and their career than you could possibly imagine. Even though, of course, growing up, you're young, you're going with your mother, you love your mother, and but you think, okay, you get to 15, 16, when you're getting drafted to junior and then getting in the NHL, it's your dad who gives you it's not. A lot of the times it's the mother that the players rely on the most. Not taking anything away from the fathers. It's just, I always assumed that it was going to be the dads, and a lot of times it's the moms.
Before we go, I got to ask you one more question from my end. Of all the interviews, which interview was the biggest surprise in any way, shape, or form? Biggest surprise of people that you interviewed? I don't care what reason, but it knocked me out in your
I'm not trying to avoid it. I don't know if there's any, like, a biggest surprise. I don't know. I got to go through the memory bank. I've done over 100 interviews in the last year, so there's lots. I'm trying to think what if there's a big surprise. Here's a funny one. I didn't know that Colby Armstrong was a figure skater, and that's his mother was a figure skating coach, and his mother taught him how to figure skate. And there's pictures of Colby figure skating in competition. So you don't think about hockey players as figure skaters, especially a guy like Colby, great guy, who's known for his toughness and being a funny guy and a great guy. He was a figure skater. That's how he learned. So I found that to be very enlightening and funny. And Colby's the best. So he was very lighthearted about it. But once again, very thankful for his mother for putting him in a figure skating competition. And he's got the whole figure skating regalia on. It's quite funny.
Tell you how he became my best friend. He came up with Sidney Crosby. And every time they came into New Jersey, wherever I was doing the game, end of the morning practice, everybody gathers around Sidney, and who's sitting next to him but Colby. And I said, I'm going to let these guys do their thing, and we became buddies. Of course, the fact that he was from Saskatoon made him a big favor for me. And one of the greatest, another example of one of the greatest guys, not just fantastic and funny.
There, as you know, Stan, you've been at this a lot longer than me, and you know all these guys. You're going to be hard pressed to find a bad guy in hockey. You really are. It's such a delight. The Alumni is, I've worked for big telecoms who, own sports networks and things like that. And you're an employee, number 38,210. It doesn't matter. The Alumni were a small group, and we all work like we're a family. There's a small group, and that comes right from the top heels. And Adam Graves, if you can find two better people than those two, good luck. Who foster just the environment and I love being able to give back to the game a little bit and to try to touch people and help them. And the Alumni is to me, it's the best place that I could be right now, with the absolute best people in our office who all have the same goal in mind, and that is to help players. We've got Wendy McCreary, whose father, Keith, played in the league. Try to find a nicer person than that. I dare you, because you won't. And these people are all the best of the best. The fact that they're not my colleagues. They're not even my friends. They're family. And we all work together in the greatest group that has the one calling: help former players, and to give back and to help and try to make tomorrow better than today. It's not a saying. It's what we honestly believe. And it's just a gift to me. You say, what do you do every day when you walk? What do you do when you wake up? What I do is every single day now, I jump out of bed and can't wait to see what the day brings and how we can help players. And it's not all a sad story. It's not, help the guys who all need help. What we can do with Paul Coffey. We're in Sweden to honor Matt Sundin for the Borja Salming ALS Courage Award, which is an alumni award. And we were there to, he doesn't need help from anybody. But I think he was appreciative, and we respect what he did to the game and the type of person he is today. And if we can make, he doesn't need our help, but if we can put a smile on his face and say, yeah, the alumni is doing the right thing, then I get up every day and spring out of bed and say, I'm doing the right thing to help people. And after, Stan, the dog eat dog world of broadcasting is a gift.
You were talking about Bobby Clark earlier, and a friend of mine that I played with, Mike Belosky, he played for Saskatoon Blades and didn't get drafted, but got signed as a free agent by Philadelphia. And he toiled in the minors for a few years and played a couple of exhibition games with the big club. And then eventually they had to make a decision, and they decided to let him go. And Bobby Clark actually, and this guy never played a game in the NHL, and Bobby Clark called him in to the office to give him the news himself because he liked them so much. And he said, you'll always be a part of the Flyer family. You ever need anything, you call. And if you need a sponsorship or me to come to a golf tournament or something like that, just call. And so those are the type of people that are in our game. And it just doesn't get any better. Like I say, I've met thousands of hockey players, and I can't think of a bad one either. It's just such a great game to be a part of.
Yeah, to be able to there are very few days in over 30 years where I've actually said I have to go to work. I don't go to work. I happen to work, if that's what you call it, but it's not work. It's a joy. And that's what you always say to your kids and everything. Find something that you love.
And you never work a day in your life.
Never. It doesn't. If you have to go to work 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are every day for 40 years, it's tough sledding. But if you find your passion and you can make a career out of it and work with the absolute best people, it's your life will be a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's a tradition of ours that Maeve
tells a joke at the end of the show.
Maeve, do you have one for us today?
Yeah, it's a riddle, and you have no more than 10 seconds to come up with the answer. What do you call a guy who hangs out with musicians? You give up?
I can't think of anything.
I give up.
A drummer. I was one, that's why I can yell it. Thank you very much. This was great, Mitch.
Maeve, Jerry, Mitch, thank you so much for joining us on Bottle Rocket. This was a pleasure. And to everyone watching and listening, we'll see you next time.
See you, Mitch.
Bye.
Yeah.